Streets of Rage was more than just Sega's answer to Final Fight. It was the first entry in what would become one of the greatest beat-em-up franchises of all time. The Sega Genesis, also known as the Mega Drive outside of North America, had released at the tail end of the 1980s, and with its superior 16-bit hardware, Sega had started gaining ground against their rival Nintendo's 8-bit NES. The Genesis appealed to a slightly older demographic of gamers. These were mostly people who had grown up with video games and now wanted a more mature experience. These gamers wanted a system that more closely mirrored the high-end graphics and sound they could find in the arcade, and the hottest arcade game of 1990 was Capcom's Final Fight. Final Fight had taken the formula established by classic beat-em-up games like Kung Fu or Double Dragon, and it created the next generation of the genre. There were 3 different characters to choose from, large enemies with expressive animations, and some of the most realistic-looking karate violence to date. Final Fight was a massive success in the arcade, and in 1990, it was both the highest-earning arcade game in Japan and the best-selling arcade conversion kit in the USA. Considering how popular Final Fight was, it became a massive problem for Sega when they found out Nintendo had made a deal with Capcom to make Final Fight an exclusive for their new 16-bit Super NES. Sega wasn't about to just hand Nintendo the victory. They had experience making beat-em-up games, including 1989's Golden Axe, which was well received. In a lot of ways, Golden Axe has everything that makes Final Fight good, except for the modern urban setting. Designer Noriyoshi Oba had just finished work on The Revenge of Shinobi and pitched an idea to develop a competitor to Final Fight made specifically as a home console game instead of starting with an arcade release. Oba also had an ace up his sleeve. He would be working with the same music composer from The Revenge of Shinobi, the legendary Yuzo Koshiro. While Koshiro did brilliant work on Revenge of Shinobi, his tracks for Streets of Rage are some of the most memorable from his lengthy career. Inspired by hits from the time, each track is unique and perfectly complements the action. You can argue that the Super Nintendo has better sound hardware, but Koshiro really knew how to make the Genesis sing. The gameplay feels simple by modern standards, but for the time, the system of grapples, throws, and attacks gave players a level of strategic freedom that was well above the standard. In Japan, the game was called Bare Knuckle, which is somewhat ironic considering the characters in the box art are wearing gloves. Streets of Rage was extremely popular when it released in the US in September of 1991. Critics loved the soundtrack, as well as the urban setting with bright neon signs. Final Fight on the Super Nintendo may have looked very close to the arcade original, but one of the 3 playable characters had been removed, and it was single-player only. On the other hand, Sega's Streets of Rage plays great with 2 players and offers 3 different playable characters. All in all, a pretty big win for Sega. The series really hit its stride with the release of the sequel, Streets of Rage 2, in December of 1992, and it's that game that is heralded as one of the best of all time. Still, the original has a lot of charm, and modern players still appreciate its fast action, exciting boss battles, and memorable soundtrack. When Complex released their list of the top 100 Sega Genesis games of all time, they ranked Streets of Rage at number 13. Modern players that attempt this game will still have to deal with all of the challenges retro video games are notorious for. The enemies are extremely aggressive and will attack mercilessly. The bosses have tons of health, and can decimate you with their attacks. You get a few continues, but it won't be long before it's game over. But what if I told you about secret codes and tricks, including a glitch that lets you skip the final boss? What if I showed you how to beat all 8 rounds and get both the good and bad endings? And what if I showed you multiple ways to defeat every boss? Even Mr. X himself? Well, on today's episode of You Can Beat Video Games, we'll learn all of that and more. If you're new to the channel, we're doing deep dives on retro video games and giving you the professional strategies that can be used by the casual gamer. Please make sure to subscribe and check out youcanbeatvideogames.com for episode lists, news, and official You Can Beat Video Games merchandise. This episode was voted on by members of our Patreon. Please join our Patreon for access to an exclusive Discord community and a chance to vote on future episodes. Let's get started. All right, Streets of Rage. Before we jump into the gameplay, there is a secret code you can use by holding down A, B, C, and right on controller 2 as you go into the options menu. Here you'll see the normal options. I personally like this control scheme, but at the bottom you'll notice some different options. You can now adjust how many lives you have and which round you start on. So we chose 7 lives and to start on round 6, and well, there you go. If you need some help and want to practice the later rounds, this is a great way to do it. Of course, for this video, we'll be starting with the normal 3 lives on round 1. So which character should we choose? All 3 of them are totally playable, but in this game, speed is the most important attribute. Being faster will make it easier to catch enemies with a grab or avoid their attacks. If it takes a few more hits to finish them off, that is not a big deal. This makes Blaze the best choice. You may also be surprised to learn that most of the attacks in this game deal the same amount of damage regardless of which character you use. The most noticeable downside to using Blaze is the 3rd hit of her grapple combo is a flip kick that deals 0 damage. The other 2 characters deal 3 damage with their grapple finisher. This can be mitigated by making sure to finish your grapples with a throw or a suplex, which is a good idea anyways. While I think Blaze is the best overall, there are some situations where Axel really shines. Adam deals the same amount of damage as Axel, but is much slower. This makes it hard for me to recommend Adam unless you're looking for an extra challenge. I'll be playing most of the game as Blaze, but I will be showing boss strategies for the other 2 characters. Alright, let's jump into the game. As we begin round 1, we drop right out of the sky onto the Streets of Rage. Let's talk about a basic strategy that will make you very successful in this game. Whenever you punch an enemy once or twice without doing the 3rd hit of your 3-hit combo, they'll be stunned and they won't fall down. So don't knock them down, instead press towards the enemy to grab them, and 2 grapple knees should be enough to kill most enemies here in round 1, but if you need some extra damage, press the jump button to flip over them, and mash the attack button while you're flipping so that you'll do a suplex as soon as you land. This enemy wearing yellow is called a signal, and they'll often try to throw you, but they do that slide attack occasionally, so you do need to watch out for that. If you smash a phone booth, there are items inside. Sometimes there's food that you can eat, but other times you'll find weapons. The broken bottle is my least favorite weapon in the game. It doesn't give you a lot of enhanced range, and in general, weapons kind of slow you down. Your basic attacks are more effective because they stun the enemies, whereas weapons will knock them over. Still, a long-range weapon like this pipe or a bat can be very effective if you understand how to use it. You generally want to stay in one place and let the enemies walk towards you, and then hit them when they get to the edge of the weapon's range. Long-range weapons like the pipe or the bat are especially effective when you're fighting large groups of enemies, and you can take them all down with a single swing. This enemy is wielding a bat. The bat's range isn't quite as good as the pipe's, but it's still a lot better than the bottle. Be aware that enemies that spawn with weapons have 2 more hit points than the same enemy that spawns without a weapon, so they may take a few extra hits to kill. This karate guy dressed up in gray is known as a Hayuko, and he enjoys getting hit in the gut with a bat about as much as anyone else. As we head to the right here, even if you're holding a weapon, you can still do your grapple attacks as well as your jump kicks, so those moves will always be available. A garage door opens in the background, revealing a Nora enemy, and it begs the question, why are people in beat-em-up games always hanging out behind closed garage doors? It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. Inside this phone booth, you'll find a large pot roast that someone was probably munching on while making a phone call. If you eat that roast, it'll restore your entire health bar, but it won't just fade away, and it'll stay on the screen even throughout the boss battle, so if you don't need it right away, you can just leave it there. When the music fades down, you'll know it's time for the boss battle, and you should hurry to the upper right corner so that you can hold to the right and grab the boss as soon as he appears. If you give him 2 grapple knees and then press left and quickly right again, you'll be able to re-grab him, and you can continue to do that over and over again until he's defeated. I'm going to show some different boss strategies using other characters, but these strategies are not character specific, so feel free to use them with any character. If you can't do that infinite grab, just try to grab him as soon as he appears and go for a suplex, and then you'll notice that after the boss is knocked down, if you stay at the top of the screen, he'll have this compulsion to walk down to the bottom, and you can manipulate him by heading back over to the left. You can try to get him there or back on the right side where he will walk to again, and either way, just try to grab him or punch him when it gets to the top of the screen, and you'll be able to finish him off pretty easily. Another thing you can try is to grab him and do a suplex, and then just try to grab him again as soon as he gets up. That's going to deal him a ton of damage, and you can manipulate him the same way, but try using jump kicks, especially if you're playing as Adam. Adam has a very good long-range jump kick, which you can easily hit the boss with as soon as he gets to the top of the screen. Also, don't forget about your special attack. This boss is very easy to defeat without using your special, but if you don't use it, you lose it, because you'll get one back as soon as you start round 2. Round 2 takes us to the back alleyways of the Streets of Rage. It's time to take out the trash. As usual, there are more of these basic enemies for us to fight. These guys are known as Garcias, and once again we're going to try to stun them with a punch, and then finish them with a grab attack. Whenever you see the signal enemies, be careful because they will try to throw you, and if you find that gas grenade, you can toss it at an enemy to stun them. Of course, you can stun them just as easily with a punch, so keep that in mind. This Garcia brought a knife to a fist fight, and yeah, that's a good idea. The knife is similar to the broken bottle, except that you can throw it at enemies for a one-time long-range attack, which is fairly useful. Throwing the knife can be a bit imprecise. Usually I just try to keep the enemies far away and keep mashing the button until I hopefully let it go. Something you need to be careful of when you have a weapon is if you stand on top of another weapon, instead of attacking, you'll keep swapping between the 2 weapons, and that can definitely mess you up. The item that looks like a tiny version of the 3 characters is an extra life, so you definitely want to pick those up when you find them. If you get grabbed from behind by a Garcia, you can still attack, and you can even throw the enemy into some others. If you get surrounded, you can try rapidly pressing left and right while mashing the attack button, and you'll attack in a whirlwind type pattern, which could help bail you out in a desperate situation. Ideally, you want to try to keep the enemies all on the same side of the screen, but that's not always something that you can control. Here we'll grab a pipe so we can get some extra range, and we'll take out these Hayukos that will try to come in from both sides. Remember that apple will not fade away, but you can walk too far to the right and scroll it off the screen, so make sure you eat it before you do that. And here is the final basic enemy type that we haven't seen yet. This juggler that wears knee-high socks is called a jack, and he's one of the more annoying enemy types to deal with. He doesn't handle getting beaten by a pipe very well, but he can throw objects at you, and he will block your basic attacks sometimes, which can be very obnoxious. Once you start hitting a jack, you can punch lock them in place by continuously punching them without knocking them down, but it's kind of hard to get the first hit sometimes. If you're struggling against those guys, you can try jump kicks, which often connect but can still be blocked by the jack. At least if you're doing jump kicks, it'll help you avoid their projectile attacks. Here's another jack, and this one is juggling axes. That's pretty impressive, and what we're going to do here is stay down at the bottom of the screen so that he'll just keep juggling up there at the top, and we can handle these other enemies first. Now we can take on the jack alone. The barrel in the background contains a delicious pot roast that someone was clearly saving for later, and you might need it because it's time for the boss, Souther. If you grab Souther when he appears in the upper right corner, you can do an infinite grab on him by hitting him with a couple grapple knees and then vaulting over him by pressing the jump button and holding to the right. You can also do this on the left side of the screen, but you'd have to hold to the left. The only problem is those additional Garcias that pop in will try to disrupt you, and that can make doing the infinite grapple difficult. So another strategy that you may want to try is staying down here at the bottom, and Souther will be manipulated to go to the top of the screen. Just try to mimic his movements and he'll stay up there, allowing you to take out the 3 Garcia enemies that come in. There's only 3 of them, and whenever you finish off this guy that has a knife, you'll be able to fight Souther without the other enemies present. By himself, Souther is not as big of a threat. He's not that difficult to grapple as soon as he gets up from being knocked down, and if you can work him to the edge of the screen, you can try to get him into that infinite grapple loop. That's a pretty safe strategy, but it's actually even safer if you were to incorporate your special attack. So you can stay down here at the bottom, manipulate the Souther to stay at the top by mimicking his movements, and just take out the first 2 enemies. Once you see the 3rd guy with a knife appear, I like to go for a grab against the boss, and once I've thrown him, immediately use the special attack. This is going to do a ton of damage to the boss, and will incidentally take out that 3rd enemy so that we don't have to deal with him anymore. You can even use the knife that guy dropped if you want to. So pick it up and maybe try to throw it at Souther. It deals quite a bit of damage. Souther may look like a nightmare, but he's no Freddy Krueger. Once he's defeated, we'll be on to round 3. In round 3, we'll actually leave the streets of rage behind and make our way to the beaches of bitterness. While there may only be 5 different types of basic enemies in this game, here in round 3 we're going to start seeing different versions of those enemy types wearing different colored outfits, like these Garcias that are wearing green. A new outfit color typically means that enemy is going to have more hit points than the ones that you've encountered before, but it could also mean that they have different enemy behaviors, so you need to pay attention to that as well. And also don't forget that the enemies that spawn with weapons are going to have a little bit more health than the ones that spawn without them. Right now we have a bat to deal with the enemies, but now that we're facing advanced versions of the enemies that have more health, we need to start practicing the punch locking technique. Before, we were hitting enemies with our basic attacks to stun them so that we could get them in a grab, but we can just keep doing the same basic attacks over and over again, and they'll stay stunned until they die. So just do 2 hits, pause for a moment, and do 2 more. As long as you don't attack too quickly, you'll never do the 3rd hit of your 3-hit combo, and you'll be able to maintain the stun on the enemies until they're defeated. If you're very good with the timing, it's even possible to punch lock enemies on both sides of your character, but it's much easier if you can keep all of the enemies on the same side. Remember not to do the flip kick when grappling enemies as Blaze. That's the 3rd hit of your 3-hit grapple combo, and it deals 0 damage to almost all enemies with the exception of just a few bosses. So don't use that move and do a suplex or throw instead. If you stay in the lower left corner, these enemies will approach you one at a time, like you're Jackie Chan or something. Don't forget to eat that roast that you'll find inside of a stack of old tires. If you walk too far to the right, you won't be able to pick it up. You cannot walk back to the left in this game. The enemies attack from all sides in this area, but most of them are not very aggressive and will approach you slowly, so you should have time to punch lock most of the enemies before you get hit from behind. The exception, of course, are the green Garcias, which will attack you very quickly, so you want to prioritize them whenever you see them on screen. As we head to the right, we're going to face more of those Nora enemies, who are surprisingly effective fighters considering that they're wearing the world's highest heels. The Noras don't have a ton of hit points though, they only have 8, so 2 grapple knees followed by a suplex is more than enough to defeat them. There are only a few more enemies left before we face the boss, and now is a great time to do a little bit more last-minute punch locking practice, because we're about to face the ultimate test of our punch locking skills when we fight the next boss, a wrestler named Abadid. Abadid appears in the upper right corner like the other bosses, but I find it easier to grab him by starting in this position. You can do an infinite grab on him by doing 2 grapple knees and then changing directions, and you can just keep doing that back and forth anywhere on the screen. However, the other enemies will get in the way once more. So it may actually be easier to fight Abadid by using the punch locking technique. If you want to try punch locking against the boss, you can start out down towards the lower right corner but not all the way over. Give the boss a little bit of room to walk in so that you'll be able to catch him with a punch. This will make it a little bit easier to deal with those extra enemies because you can often catch them in the same punch lock, or you can at least move to react to them when they get close. So just keep him towards the edge of the screen, punch him slowly, and he won't have a chance to react. It won't be long until he's defeated. If you want to try punch locking the boss, another position that you can use is to start at the top of the screen near this left tree. This is another good place where you can punch lock the boss, and you can use your special attack to get that additional enemy off your back. It should also take the boss down to his orange health bar, so you'll be able to finish him very quickly afterwards. Just keep punch locking the boss, push him over to the right side of the screen, and the other enemy should just follow over there and not bother you at all. Whether you pronounce his name Abadid or Abadidi, this guy may look like the ultimate warrior, but with these techniques, he'll look like the ultimate joke. In round 4, we're back to the streets of Rage, and this time we're crossing over a bridge that has open pits. This round is mostly populated by advanced versions of the basic enemies, including the green Garcias that we've seen before, but some newcomers like the purple Signals and these Noras that are dressed in black. These enhanced versions of the basic enemies have more hit points, so you'll want to get good at the punch locking technique to grind them down. The black Noras that you face in this round can be defeated with the punch locking technique, but in the later rounds you'll encounter some black Noras that will cower and duck whenever you punch them, and for those ones you're going to want to use your grapples. In front of this pit you'll find a road cone that has a weapon inside, and you'll want to destroy all of the construction barriers in this round to find weapons and items. You can knock enemies into an open pit to instantly kill them, but they can do the same to you, so it may be safer to just stay up here at the top of the screen. Take out the barrier on the right side of the pit to find a money bag. Money bags are worth points, and points can earn you extra lives. You'll get an extra life for the first 50,000 points that you earn, and then you'll get an additional one up for each 100,000 points after that. These enemies were dumb enough to walk near the edge of the pit, and you can give them a jump kick to quickly knock them backwards. You can also knock them backwards by punching them, but a jump kick is a much faster and more effective way. You can find a bat up here, which we can use against this Nora wearing black, and there's also an apple inside that striped post if you need a small health refill. Over here we'll fight a jack, and a bat is a very good way to deal with a jack. If you don't have a bat, you may want to try jump kicks, or if you can catch him in a punch, you can get him with the old punch lock technique. Don't miss the 1-up hidden in this road cone, and we haven't seen these red Hayuko enemies yet. They're a good bit more dangerous than the gray variety, and will aggressively try to jump kick you. Grab an apple if you need a snack, because in this next section we're going to be fighting in some very tight quarters, so we won't have a lot of room to maneuver around. The cramped space up here makes it especially difficult to avoid this red Hayuko's jump kick, so try to catch him in a punch lock as soon as you can. Continue making your way to the right. We have to fight some yellow signals here, which are the easier variety, but in a moment we'll be fighting the purple ones, which are a bit more difficult. The purple signals love to throw you, and if you get tossed in the air, don't forget that you can hold up and press the jump button to land on your feet and you won't take any damage. It's very easy to forget to do that when you're in the heat of battle, but if you can train your reflexes a little bit, you'll never get hurt by those guys again. Make your way to the right, and if you're getting low on health, that next road cone conceals a pot roast that some construction worker had squirreled away. You may want to eat it yourself so that you can refill your health before moving on to the next area, which is the final part of this round. Stay up here at the top while you're fighting the purple signals so you don't get thrown into an open pit. It doesn't matter if you press up and jump to stop the damage if you're falling to your death. So continue to make your way to the right, take out this green Garcia before heading over there. There's going to be a bunch of additional enemies we have to finish before the boss. A few more green Garcias come into play, and there should be 2 purple signals that we have to fight here, and there you can see I pressed up and jump, and I did it again, no damage. So it's hard for those guys to hurt you if they're throwing you and you know to press up and jump. That trick will also come in handy later when we get to the boss of round 5. This green signal enemy is the most difficult type of signal, but he can be punch locked just like any other. And if you hurry to the upper right corner whenever the music fades down, you should be able to grab the boss, Bongo, as soon as he appears. It's actually easy to get an infinite grab on Bongo by just hitting him with 2 grapple knees and then pressing left, then quickly pressing right again to re-grab him. Unfortunately, the extra enemies here make that technique a bit more difficult to do, so the best way to fight him may be to use a punch locking technique. If you're committed to doing the punch locking technique, you may want to start down here in the bottom with your foot on this crack in the ground, and as soon as you see him appear, start walking to the right, then turn back around to the left, and start your punch lock. Do 2 punches, then pause, 2 punches, then pause, or just a slow stream of steady single punches, and it will be very hard for the additional enemies to get you, and you'll take out Bongo with no problem. Those two strategies work fine in an ideal situation, but what if you mess up and get hit by Bongo? Well, even if things go awry, you can easily correct by using your special move. Your special attack will deal a ton of damage to Bongo and it'll knock him down, and then you just want to hover over his body and start punch locking him as soon as he stands. It takes a moment for him to get the fire breath going again, so this is one of the easiest bosses to punch lock. This boss may look intimidating with his large size and dragon breath, but with these techniques, you'll be able to beat Bongo like a drum. There are definitely no streets in round 5. This is more like the boats of anger. In any case, you'll want to take it slow as you make your way to the right across this angry vessel. You're going to have to fight a lot of enemies at once as it is, and if you run to the right too quickly, they will pile up on the screen. This could be a good technique to use if you're planning to unleash your special attack, but if you're just using your basic moves, you probably want to fight fewer enemies at once. These green Garcias will try to stab you, which is very rude, so take them out and make your way to the right, where you'll see some random exhaust vents up here on the deck of the ship. If you punch them, you'll notice that they don't go anywhere and actually contain items. It's a little known nautical fact that sailors use dummy exhaust vents to hide their valuables, especially apples and pot roasts. After you defeat this guy, the next enemy that comes in is going to be carrying a bat, and you'll want to pick up that bat because you're about to be ambushed by a ton of enemies at once. So pick up the bat, and you should be able to repel large groups of enemies by just hitting them as they approach you. So stay towards the middle of the screen, and when the enemies get close, hit them with the bat. And this Garcia has made us drop our bat, but he was the last one left, so the bat did its job. Over here you'll face an entire horde of black Noras. Some of them can be punch locked, but others will scream when you punch them and duck down, which makes them resistant to your punch lock technique. The best thing to do here, in my opinion, is to run all the way to the right, build up a bunch of enemies on screen, and then let them have it with your special attack. By running ahead to the right, you'll also be able to grab that roast, and by this part of round 5, you may be desperate for it. If you used your special move, just clean up any enemies that are left, and then make your way to the right. Don't forget that in this game, if you lose a life, whenever you respawn, your special attack will refresh, so you want to make sure to use it anytime you notice that your health is low. Continue to make your way to the right, where enemies will jump up from out of the water somehow and continue to attack you. It's impressive the way they can shoot up out of the water like a dolphin and somehow emerge on the deck of the ship totally dry. These guys also don't have a whole lot of hit points, so a few hits followed by a grab and a suplex could easily take them out. And over here you'll find another pot roast, so make sure to eat that if you need some more health. You'll also find a lead pipe, which we can use to mow through the next few enemies. Before we can move forward, we have to face a rematch with Abadid, but this time there are no additional enemies to deal with, so it's easy to get him in the infinite grab. Hit him with 2 grapple knees and then press to the opposite direction so that you'll grab him on the other side. You don't have to do it on the side of the screen, it will work wherever you're at. On the other side of Abadid, we have a whole bunch of enemies to face. Hopefully you still have the pipe, that will make them easier. Otherwise, you just want to try to punch lock these guys, or hit them with a few punches and then quickly do your suplex. Inside this exhaust vent, we'll find a small police car, which is an additional special attack. If you die and have more than one special attack available, you'll go back to 1, so if you haven't already used your special and now you have 2, don't forget to use it before losing a life. And here we have 4 blackjacks to fight. These guys are pretty obnoxious. I would recommend just using jump kicks on them until there aren't very many of them left. That will make it easier to avoid their projectile attacks. The jump kicks are definitely not the fastest solution to fighting these enemies, but you should have plenty of time on the clock. If you do ever run out of time, you'll just lose a life, so that's all that happens, and then the time will be refreshed. Normally there's plenty of time to take out the enemies, but when we get to the boss of this round, the clock will come into play. Keep making your way to the right. There's a few more of those purple signals here. If you're able to pick up a baseball bat, you can use that to fend off the enemies, or just try to hit them with your punch lock techniques. Remember, if you get thrown by a purple signal, press up and jump to prevent the damage. We're almost to the boss now. That meat that you see there, you can leave it on the screen as long as you need to, because it will stay during the boss fight. This red jack is the final enemy, and as soon as he's defeated, get ready because it's time for a difficult boss fight. Onihime and Yasha may look like clones of Blaze, but they do two different attack sets. One of them is a kicker, and the other one is a grappler. The kicker is the easier one to deal with, and if you stay at the top of the screen and keep walking towards the grappler, you can force her to constantly jump over your head. Then you just need to get out of the way of the kicker whenever she kicks, and you'll have an opportunity to fight back. If you get caught by the grappler, try to press up and jump if she throws you forward. If she catches you from behind, that could be a good opportunity to use your special attack, which will not only deal damage to both bosses, but will bail you out from taking damage. When there's only one boss left, she'll use both movesets, so you want to look for her to do a jump kick, because that's the easiest attack to counter. After she does the jump kick, just get out of the way and try to get her in a grab to finish her off. If you don't have any special attacks available, you're going to have to pay attention to the clock. If you're not fast enough, you could easily lose a life from running out of time. Start up here in this position so that as soon as the kicker does her first kick, you can move down slightly to avoid it and then move back up to get her into a grapple. Do 2 grapple knees followed by the suplex to deal maximum damage, and you'll notice that if you can grapple the kicker, the grappler won't be able to suplex you. She'll just do an empty throw instead. If you're playing in the 2-player mode, you can have one of the players just grab the grappler and then have the other player move to the top of the screen, where you should be able to fight the kicker alone. The grappler won't escape from the grapple, and you can just hold her in place until the kicker is defeated. In single player mode, if you're not going to use any special attacks, you just need to make sure that you're maximizing damage every time you get the boss in a grab. So do the 2 grapple knees, do the vault over the boss, and then follow with the suplex. Make sure you're mashing the attack button as you vault over the boss to make sure you get the suplex and that the boss doesn't escape from you instead. Of course, the ideal scenario is if you can reach the bosses with 2 special attacks available. You'll still want to do the same thing at the beginning, try to get some easy damage in on the kicker, and then unleash your first special. After unleashing the first special, I like to stay up at the top and try to make the kicker kick you again. So head over here to the left and get her in the full grapple suplex combo and follow it up with your second special move. That should be enough to kill one of the bosses. With only one boss left, it'll be a lot easier. So was the police car on the boat the entire time, or did it jump on there from the road? There are some questions we may never know the answer to. Just stay at the top of the screen, look for her to do a jump kick, dodge out of the way, and then get her in a grapple. Onihime and Yasha are also known as Mona and Lisa, but by whichever name, they are some of the most difficult bosses in the game. Round 6 brings us to this factory setting, which may be a mandatory inclusion for almost any beat-em-up game. Some areas of the ground are covered in moving conveyor belts, but they don't make a huge impact to the gameplay. In this round, you'll encounter some red Garcias, and these guys take quite a few hits to kill. Oddly, some of these red Garcias have a strange AI behavior where they won't actually try to punch you, and instead will just try to grab you. And they'll just hold you there. You won't take any damage from the grab unless another enemy comes down and hits you. So for the most part, unless they're wielding a weapon, the red Garcias are not as dangerous as you may think. Here's another one of those Noras that ducks down when we try to punch her, so you want to get her in a grab instead. A few grab attacks should be enough to take her out, and then we'll be able to make our way to the right. Here comes a red Garcia with a knife. Red Garcia's already had a lot of health, and remember, because this one is wielding a weapon, he has additional hit points. And that brings us to our first crusher machine. The easiest way to get past these crushers is to walk across the top of them and just confidently move forward to the right. If you stay moving and don't hesitate, you should be able to make it across no problem. Don't try to cross those crushers down at the bottom of the screen, you'll have a lot more problems then. Over here we're going to fight a purple signal followed by a red Garcia, but after we take them out, we're going to have to face another mid-level boss fight, and this time it's going to be Bongo. Bongo will come in from the upper left corner, so you want to get up there and try to get him in an infinite grab. The infinite grab on Bongo is actually very easy to do. All you need to do is give him 2 grapple knees, press away from the boss, and then quickly press back towards him to grab him a second time. You should be able to do this over and over again until he's defeated. There's no additional enemies when you're fighting Bongo this time, so he's a lot easier than he was in round 4. Past another crusher machine, we'll face some more Garcias with weapons. This guy has a bat for us, so once we're done punch locking him to death, we can pick up that bat and use it to fend off the enemies that attack us while we're on these conveyor belts. Try to stay towards the middle of the screen, and as the enemies get close, let them have it with the bat. If you lose the bat, then try to get them with a punch locking technique, or maybe use some grapples. If you can manage to keep the bat throughout this entire section, it's very good against the black Noras that you'll have to fight over here to the right. So you can just keep hitting them with the bat, and your enhanced range will make it harder for them to hit you with their weapons. If you keep moving to the right and quickly get past the next crusher machine, you'll be able to pin whatever enemies are left in the right corner and just punch lock them until they're finished. So just keep punch locking these enemies until they're defeated, and there's not a lot of space to maneuver over here on the right, but you can actually use that to your advantage and lure some of the enemies into the crusher machine. You do need to walk close enough to it to make it fall. If you're on the right side of the machine and don't get too close, you should be pretty safe, and once the enemies are cleared, make your way to the right. You'll be able to find a second special attack and an extra life in the boxes there, so definitely don't miss out on those items. And then you'll have to fight another blackjack, but there's a lead pipe nearby, which will make him easier to manage. With that jack out of the way, we can run to the right and take advantage of another crusher corner, which will make it easier to defeat these enemies. By hanging out over here, you'll be able to lure them under the crusher where you can hit them with a machine and make it generally harder for them to get to you. So just hang out here over on the right side, fight whichever enemies do make it up into your corner, and for the other ones, just let the machines deal with them. So we should be able to trigger the machine by staying over in this area, and this poor Garcia has taken multiple smashings before we finally finished him off. Over here, you'll need to take on another purple signal, and you'll want to deal with him before moving too far to the right or more enemies will spawn. You'll also notice that there are 2 crusher machines right next to each other here, and you'll want to quickly walk past both of them once you start moving. So get past both crusher machines, and when you've passed the 2 crushers, you'll know that you're almost at the end of the round. This box contains a pot roast which can refill your health and will be available to you during the ensuing boss fight. We have a few more enemies to fight before the boss, but whenever you see a yellow signal, he's the last one, so you need to be ready as soon as he is defeated. So we'll take out this red Garcia, he's a hugger. And here's a blue Garcia, who's very easy to defeat. And this should be it. Yes, there is the yellow signal. Once this guy is gone, head to the upper right corner quickly. The boss here are the double Southers, and if you can grab one of the bosses as soon as he appears on the right, you can try to get a couple of your infinite combos in before the second one sneaks up behind you. Remember, you want to get 2 grapple knees on the boss, and then vault over him while holding towards the side of the screen, and you'll be able to catch him in a second grab. When the second boss catches up to you, I recommend using one of your special attacks. If you have 2 special attacks, even better, but you really want to take out at least one of the bosses as quickly as possible, because once there's only one left, you can work him to the edge of the screen, and then easily get him in that infinite grab pattern. If you don't have any special attacks available or you don't want to use them, you still want to try to grab one of the Southers as soon as possible so that you can get some cheap hits in, but then you can try hanging out at the top of the screen where you'll be able to manipulate the Southers by keeping them at the bottom and working them towards the edge. They'll slowly move up towards the top where you should be able to grab them, and then you can unleash the fury on them. Try to get rid of one of the bosses as soon as you can, and then you can easily defeat the other one. Remember, just stay at the top, try to manipulate him towards the edge of the screen, and once you get him to the edge, you can do this combo over and over again until he's gone. Now, if you do have 2 special attacks available to you and you're willing to use both of them, the best way to deal with these guys is to try to get 3 grapple knees on the first one, followed by a suplex. That's exactly enough damage so that 2 of these special attacks will finish off the first Souther, leaving only the other one, which you can work to the edge of the screen and then get with your infinite combo. So you want to do 2 grapple knees, vault over him holding right, do a 3rd grapple knee, then vault over him again, do the suplex by mashing the attack button while you're in the air, and then you're going to hit your first special. Then you're just going to do the second special right after that, and you should only have 1 Souther left when it's all said and done. Double Souther is one of the most difficult bosses in the game, but if you know what you're doing, it's a lot more manageable. Round 7 takes us up above the Streets of Rage on a wild elevator ride. It seems like there needs to be one of these in every beat-em-up game, and I don't think this thing is OSHA approved. It looks very dangerous. The right side of the screen is essentially an open pit. There's a little bit of a guardrail there that will keep you from falling in, but if you get knocked over it, it's instant death. You can use this to your advantage, especially if you suplex an enemy near the edge, he'll fall right through the bottom. Whenever you're fighting the easier enemies, you can take your chances near the edge of the elevator, but whenever things get tougher, I recommend staying on the left side and trying to push the enemies to the right. Just make sure you're not the one that gets knocked off the edge. When you've defeated enough enemies, the elevator will continue to move upwards, and it will stop before you have to fight anyone else. Most of the enemies will spawn from the doors on the left side, but a fair number of them will fall from the sky, so you do need to be on your toes at all times. We're going to be fighting large groups of enemies in this round, and we're going to have to do it in a small, confined space. So use your punch locking techniques, use your grapples, try to throw the enemies over the edge, and just do whatever you can to clear them out. You do have your special attack, and there is no boss in this round, so if your health gets low, make sure to use that special attack. There's nothing to save it for. We're getting close to the top of the tower, but we're not quite there yet. You'll know you've reached the top when you see the tops of skyscrapers in the background. Another strategy you may want to try here is attacking from the upper right corner. It's difficult for enemies to put you over the edge there, but you can still get insta-kills with a well-placed suplex or throw. It's also possible to get up on the railing. It's not super beneficial to do this and can be a little bit risky, but it is fun to do. Once we defeat these last two green Garcias, the elevator will magically start moving again, possibly because we're no longer exceeding the weight limit. Remember that the enemies will not attack you when the elevator is moving, so feel free to take a breather, and you can reposition yourself in the upper right corner to prepare for the next onslaught. This is not the top of the elevator. We still have one more floor to climb after this one, so just keep beating your way through the enemies, and remember, if you're playing as Blaze, you don't want to use your 3-hit grapple combo that ends in a flip kick. Always try to end your grapples with a throw or a suplex. That flip kick does work on a couple of the bosses, and it would work on player 2 in a 2-player game, but it's just not effective against the normal enemies. We have another one of those Noras that ducks down whenever you punch at her, so make sure to fight her using your grapple techniques, but the other Nora can be punch locked with no problem. And once they're defeated, the elevator will go up again, and this time we're going to see the tops of the skyscrapers. This is the final floor. And so we'll use our special attack, and you can see if you use it while those enemies are in the air, they're immediately killed by the action of using the special attack, but they would have been killed by the bomb anyways. This is also your last opportunity to have a second player join the game. Once you get into round 8, you will no longer be able to join a second player. One thing about round 7 is there are no food items here, which makes it very difficult to get to the end without getting killed. But once we take down this last purple signal, that'll be the end, and it'll be time for the final round. Well, we barely survived there, but we will get our health completely refilled when we begin round 8. Something that we won't get, though, is another special attack. Because in round 8, there are no specials. It doesn't matter if you used the last one you had or not, you will have 0 when you get in here, because this is an interior level. There are no streets of rage here, so I guess this is more like the hallways of fury. Round 8 is a boss gauntlet, and that means you're going to need to fight one of each boss that you faced before, although you will not have to fight Double Souther. You'll only have to fight one of that guy. You will, on the other hand, have to fight Onahime and Yasha, so get ready for that rematch. If you're playing in 2-player mode, you'll fight 2 of the bosses instead of just 1, so you'll need to make sure that both players are coordinating their attacks. As you make your way across round 8, watch out for rogue room service carts that will come rolling towards you. If you hit them, they often contain items. I'm not a big fan of using the bottle weapons, but if you like them, feel free to pick one up here, or maybe grab this lead pipe that this green Garcia enemy has. Personally, I think it's better to just stick with our basic moves here so that we can continue punch locking the enemies. We're going to be fighting a lot of the advanced versions of enemies here, so they have a lot of HP. Don't miss this apple underneath the room service cart, and whenever you see these purple signal enemies, that is usually your signal that a boss is coming soon. Also, don't forget that if they toss you, you can press up and the jump button to avoid damage. That will certainly come in handy. And once the last purple signal is defeated, you're going to want to make your way to the upper right corner so that you can grab the first boss as soon as he appears. Once again, we're fighting Antonio. For this green Antonio, I recommend using the Vault Grapple strategy. So do 2 grapple knees and then vault over him while holding towards the side of the screen. Wait until you lock in the grapple again, and continue to do 2 grapple knees and vault over him until he runs out of health and dies. As you head over here to the left, you'll face a blackjack, so try to catch him with your punch locking techniques. And underneath that room service cart, you'll find a pot roast to refill your health. Use your punch locking techniques to take out the red Garcias as you continue to the left. This is the only round in the game where you go from right to left, and it is a nice change of pace. Also, make sure to watch out for those rogue room service carts, which are definitely at large in this area. And as we head over here to the left, more of those purple signal enemies. And what do we know about purple signal enemies? Well, they signal that a boss is coming soon, and the next boss is going to be a rematch with Souther. Luckily, there's no additional enemies when we fight Souther this time, so as long as we're ready to grab him as soon as he appears in the upper right corner, you want to get there now, you can do the vault grapple technique just like we did on Antonio before. So 2 grapple knees, vault over him while holding right, and as soon as you get the grab on him again, do 2 grapple knees and vault over again. You don't have to be that fast to get it going. Once you get him in the grab, as long as you press the right buttons, you should be able to continue it infinitely. If you messed up your grapple and took a beating while fighting Souther, you'll be able to find a pot roast underneath a room service cart here, so make sure to grab that before proceeding onwards. And over here, well, it's the purple signal enemies again, signaling that there is yet another boss coming soon. So we need to take these guys out first, but the next boss is going to be Abadid. So once we finish off this last purple signal, we want to get over to the right side of the screen so we can quickly catch him in a grab. You want to be towards the middle here for Abadid, and the technique for fighting him is a bit different than the previous 2 bosses. You want to do 2 grapple knees and then press to the other direction to be able to grab him from the other side, and you can just keep that going, grapple knee left, grapple knee right, until he's defeated. The timing is a little bit more precise on that infinite grapple, so he's one of the more difficult bosses here in the gauntlet. You'll be able to find another pot roast here if you need to refill your health, and this time there's not going to be purple signal enemies before the boss, so this one bucks the pattern a little bit, and you'll need to be prepared to fight Bongo after you face another wave of the red Hayuko enemies. So keep making your way to the left, you'll find a knife here and an apple, which is not quite as good as the roast, but if you need a small refill, it could definitely help. Here's that wave of red Hayukos, so when you're fighting the red Hayukos in front of this large window, make sure to get ready to move to the upper right corner so that you can grab Bongo as soon as he appears. Bongo is very easy to infinite grab. Just do 2 grapple knees, left and then right, 2 grapple knees, left and then right, and you should have no problem defeating that guy, assuming that you were able to grab him before he unleashes the fire. If he does get the fire off, it's no big deal. Once you can get him in a grab, you can do that infinite grapple anywhere. Keep making your way to the left, watch out for the room service carts, and you'll find your pot roast in the one up here at the top, near that strange statue, which I can't tell if she's holding a ball or she's pregnant. Yeah, totally not sure. I'm not sure why there would be a pregnant angel. Maybe that angel statue just has a pot belly. In any case, this green Jack enemy has the most hit points of any Jack we've faced so far, but he can be defeated with a punch locking technique just like anyone else can. And now we'll face some black Hayukos, followed by a nice variety pack of enemies. There will be a purple signal in the next set of enemies, which will signal to us that the bosses are coming soon, and the next boss fight is going to be Onihime and Yasha again, so we need to be very prepared for that. Here's that purple signal. There's also this red Garcia that goes along with him. But once we take out these last couple Garcias, you want to position yourself at the top of the screen so that you can dodge the kicker and get a quick grapple on her as soon as the fight begins, just like we always do. Keep the fight with these two up here at the top of the screen. Do your best to keep track of which one is the grappler and which one is the kicker, and you want to keep walking towards the grappler so she'll be forced to jump over you, and look for the kicker to do her jump kick attack so that you can counter it with a grapple or at least a few punches. It is possible, but difficult, to grapple them both at the same time. If you can make that happen, make sure to do the maximum amount of damage with a suplex. Because we don't have our special attack, the timer is definitely an issue against these two, so you need to do your best to hit them with everything you've got whenever you can. If you can defeat the kicker, then you know what to do next. The grappler gains all of the moves, and then she'll start doing the jump kick to her own detriment. You'll be able to counter it and finish her off. And that brings us to the end of the boss gauntlet. On the other side of the door, we come face to face with Mr. X, and he has a question for us. Make sure to answer no to this question, unless you want to get sent all the way back to round 6. That is not a joke. Mr. X is quite offended when you decline his offer, and sends in an elite team of red Garcias to fight you. These guys are not that difficult considering what we've been through already, and you'll need to defeat 2 waves of them before the final boss battle. So try to conserve your health here. A very difficult battle is coming up, and as soon as you defeat the last Garcia in the second wave, get close to Mr. X so you can catch him in a grab as soon as he gets out of his chair. Just like most beat-em-up final bosses, Mr. X has a machine gun, and when he's on the opposite side of the screen from you, he'll strafe the room with it. You want to stay at the top of the screen, and when you see him start shooting his gun, do a jump kick when the bullets get near the top of the room, and that will help you avoid them. Then Mr. X will come running over to your side, and if you're standing near the angel statue in the background, you'll have a great opportunity to grab him. Once you've grabbed him, ideally you want to throw him back to the other side of the room instead of throwing him off the screen. If you throw him off the screen, he'll come back on with a vengeance, and it will be difficult to avoid his attack. It is possible to counter it with a well-timed jump kick, as you can see here. And that will bring us to the good ending of the game. This game has 2 different endings, and you may be thinking, well, to get the bad ending, all we probably need to do is just say yes to Mr. X's question. And while that is partially right, that's not the whole truth. And we're not going to get to the ending right now. We will watch the good ending a little bit later. But first, I want to show you what does happen if you say yes when Mr. X questions you. So we have Axel here. We come to Mr. X. He asks us to join his organization, and let's say we agree. Would we consider becoming his right-hand man? Yeah, why not? Well, if you say yes, your reward is getting sent through a trap door to round 6. I wasn't kidding about that. From here, you'll need to make your way through the most difficult 3 rounds of the game a second time, and while this may be a great way to rack up a high score, this will make beating the game a whole lot more difficult. When you get back to Mr. X's room, he won't question you a second time, so you won't be able to continuously go back to round 6 over and over again. Instead, he'll just be kind of annoyed that you're still alive, and the regular boss battle will ensue. We do have to fight those waves of Garcias before Mr. X, and make sure after you fight the second wave of Garcias that you're ready to grab Mr. X as soon as he gets up off of his throne. As Axel, I find Mr. X to be a bit easier to defeat than with Blaze. Jump kicks are a good way to attack Mr. X, Obviously, you'd love to get him in a solid grab to deal a ton of damage, but you can definitely hit him opportunistically with jump kicks, and Axel's jump kicks deal more damage than Blaze's, so that's why he's a little bit better here. Jump kicks are also a good way to manage the very aggressive Red Garcia enemies that accompany Mr. X, and those guys are super obnoxious and are what actually make this fight difficult. If you can position Mr. X with the two Garcias together on the screen, you can do several jump kicks in a row on them for a lot of damage. Of course, the typical strategy of catching him in a grab and throwing him back to the other side so that he'll run across after he does his machine gun attack will still work with Axel, so always fall back on that if you need to. As Mr. X's health bar turns completely white, he dies in a shower of shell casings. And although we were able to get a very high score by answering yes to his question, over 800,000 points, we still are going to get the normal good ending here. So that is not how to get the bad ending. If you want to get the bad ending, the only way to do it is to be playing in a 2-player game. So here we are, the normal good ending. One nice thing about having a super high score is the game does keep track of lives above 9, it just doesn't display more than 9 on the screen. So let's talk about the bad ending. So you need to make it to Mr. X's room in a 2-player game and have one character say yes while the other says no. If you both say yes, you'll go through the trap door back to round 6 and you don't want that. And if you both say no, you'll fight the end boss together. However, if you both choose a different option, and it doesn't matter which one of you picks yes and which one of you picks no, you'll have to fight to the death until only one character is left. Then you need to say no. If you say yes here, you'll go back to round 6 and you'll still get the good ending. So make sure that both characters choose something different, fight to the death, and then say no, which will trigger the normal boss battle, and that is how you get the bad ending. What is up with these final bosses in beat 'em up games anyways? Here we are just politely punching our way through the bad guys, with the occasional stabbing or bludgeoning with a baseball bat, and this guy has to come out here with a machine gun. That is extremely rude. As usual, you want to get him with a grab as soon as he gets out of his chair. And as Adam has even better jump kicks than Axel's. They deal the same amount of damage, but they have longer range, so you definitely want to take advantage of those. Mr. X looks a little bit scary, but if you make it to his room with a few lives left, you'll have a very good chance of beating the game, especially if you know how to perform a throw. If you're able to do this technique where you just catch him as soon as he walks over to your side of the screen and toss him over to the other side, you'll be able to deal a ton of damage and he'll never come back onto the screen with his gun butt melee attack, which is pretty difficult to avoid. And as Adam delivers the killing blow, Mr. X is defeated once more. And that's it. We've done it. We've beaten Streets of Rage. All we can do now is sit back, relax, and enjoy the cheesy bad ending. They call this the bad ending, but there's Adam sitting on a throne, and it says, "You became the boss, and you are great." Well, that doesn't seem so bad. They call it the bad ending because your character turned evil, but as far as Adam is concerned, he's now the head of a multinational crime syndicate and seems to be doing quite well for himself. As the final credits roll, an eerie music track plays in the background. The Revenge of Shinobi also had 2 endings, but they were a lot easier to find than this one. This second bad ending is actually pretty well hidden. You have to play through on the 2-player mode, make sure that both people answer differently to Mr. X's question, and then fight to the death? I'm sure that a lot of people played this game and never even knew this existed. Not only that, unlike the normal good ending, which is the same no matter which character you play as, the bad ending is character specific and looks different depending on which character you played as. So if you want to be able to see the bad endings, you're going to need to find a friend to help you out, unless you're willing to try to play 2 controllers as one player, which is definitely possible to do, but very difficult. After the special thanks credits roll by, we see a last credit that says Sega 1991, and then we get to see Adam laugh before the screen fades down to a deep sepia tone. So we'll watch that happen here. Presented by Sega 1991. And of course, because this is You Can Beat Video Games, I am going to show you all 3 characters' bad endings, although we're not going to go all the way through the credit roll each time. I'm just going to show you this tail end part for the other 2 characters. So there's Adam laughing, and then it says bad end. Yeah, we know it's the bad end. And let's take a look at Blaze's bad end. So pretty similar looking, except it's Blaze instead of Adam, and she just kind of bounces up and down a little bit. Her laugh is a little bit weird looking. And I think my favorite of the 3 bad endings is Axel's. Axel just has the biggest, most exaggerated laugh at the end, like he just heard the world's funniest joke. And that brings us to the last of the 3 bad endings. But what about the good ending? And what about that way to skip the final boss? Well, let's take a look at that now. In a 2-player game as Blaze and Axel make your way to the rematch with Oni, Hime, and Yasha, and you can do this. Let's take a look at it in slow motion. Have Blaze grab the kicker, then lure the grappler near Blaze so that you'll do an empty suplex, releasing the kicker. Then you need to have Axel grab Blaze, but he'll just grab air. Now quickly have Blaze grab the kicker, and you need to have Axel do a grapple knee, which will release the kicker, and whenever she jumps, you need to have both characters vault. You'll have one vault over the other, and if Axel goes up off the top of the screen, you'll immediately clear round 8. If you go off the top of the screen in one of the other 7 rounds, usually you just lose a life, but if you do it here in round 8, you immediately finish the game, and you'll get the good ending. And that's it, we've done it. We've beaten Streets of Rage. All we can do now is sit back, relax, and enjoy the cheesy, good ending. I like that they break up the credits with these little scenes, and I also like that Oba is credited as "There is no accounting for tastes." What a funny guy. Even if he's using a silly alias, you can definitely tell that this game was made by Noriyoshi Oba, and something that I noticed this time when I played it is that the display at the top of the screen where the life bar is looks very similar to the one that he designed for Revenge of Shinobi. Everyone loves Streets of Rage 2, and for good reason, but you shouldn't just miss out on this one. This game is actually a lot of fun, despite being fairly simple. As the good ending wraps up, our characters are reunited with the policeman who launches the grenades for our special attack, and we gotta give a shout out to that guy, especially for having the pinpoint accuracy to be able to roast all of the enemies and never put a scratch on Blaze, Axel, or Adam. As the sun sets over the city, we can reflect on a job well done. For now, the citizens are safe, but it'll only be a matter of time before we need to rise up and face the Streets of Rage again. Well, I hope this video was able to help you finally beat Streets of Rage and put an end to Mr. X's evil crime syndicate. If it did, make sure to give it a like, and make sure to subscribe for more videos. But there will always be more sinister crime bosses threatening to conquer the streets. And that's why we'll be back again next week with another video game you can beat. Thanks for watching.